even though it has been 3 decades since Mongolia has stepped away from being a one-party socialist state to become its own democratic republic, the previous Soviet influence of its past still lingers on in the country's treatment of LGBTQ+ people. Furthermore, a variety of different cultural perspectives like religion, tradition, societal norms, and even history have shaped the average Mongolian's opinion on queer people significantly. According to the Mongolian Human Development Report of 2016, the National Human Rights Commission found that almost 80% of individuals who identified as lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender had experienced some form of human rights abuse or discrimination during the previous 3 years. What does LGBTQ+ mean? LGBTQ+ is simply an acronym for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer or questioning. These terms are simply used to describe a person's sexual orientation and gender identity. The plus is usually added to be more inclusive for other identities and orientations such as pansexual and etc. What are human rights? The United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, or the OHCHR, defines human rights as universal rights that are inherent to every human being, regardless of their nationality, gender, ethnicity, color, religion, language, or any other status, including sexual orientation. History and culture. As the country is best known for its roots in the Mongolian Empire, many of its policies from over 8 centuries ago can still be felt today. In an effort to increase the number of the Mongolian population, Genghis Khan banned homosexual relationships and intercourse. When Mongolia went under the control of the Qing dynasty, it was forced to adopt and enforce its laws against homosexuality. It was no different when Mongolia was a Soviet satellite state and homosexuality was punished with imprisonment. The most dominant religion of Mongolia, Tibetan Buddhism, has no condemnation against homosexuality. The present. After the 1990 Democratic Revolution, the Mongolian Criminal Code finally removed all mentions of homosexuality. Since then, remarkable progress has been made, with Mongolia supporting a number of LGBT reforms in the United Nations. Since 2013, the LGBT Center has been organizing annual Pride Walks as a way to spread awareness about the queer community in Mongolia in order to advocate for acceptance and equality. However, there is still a lot to be desired, and only until very recently, hate crimes against LGBTQ+ were still extremely prevalent and many went unreported. Currently, the Mongolian Constitution defines marriage as only between a man and a woman, and same-sex marriages are not recognized under Mongolian law. Same-sex couples are also not allowed to adopt children. Understanding of LGBTQ+ people is still very low, and a large part of the public is either uninformed or misinformed. According to a report by the LGBT Center, over 73% of the LGBTQ+ people that responded said that they had considered suicide in the past because of social intolerance and failure to understand them. How does Mongolia compare to other countries? Even though remarkable progress has been made all over the world, there are still many hardships LGBTQ+ individuals face. Same-sex acts are punishable by death in more than a dozen countries, and 68 countries still have homosexuality criminalized. Even in the 28 countries that have legalized same-sex marriage, LGBTQ+ people still face a variety of hardships and discrimination just for their sexuality and/or gender identity. According to the Equaldex, Mongolia is much more tolerant towards LGBTQ+ people than its closest neighbors, China and Russia, socially and politically. However, compared to countries in the West, like the United States, it has much less legal protections for their human rights. To learn more about the different cultural perspectives of the United States of America, we talked to Dr. William Koehler, a therapist experienced in working with LGBTQ+ people. He told us that in the past few years, because of the Trump presidency, social progress regarding LGBTQ+ rights has slowed down significantly. But now that Joe Biden is the elected president, he hopes that the past rate of increasing queer acceptance will return. The main cultural perspective of the United States, he said, was Judeo-Christian values. A large portion of the U.S. population is white Christians whose traditional, conservative beliefs not only have a significant impact on the average American's opinion of queer people, but also the laws written by the government as well. Unfortunately, marginalized people and/or people of color can be socially unaccepting of LGBTQ+ people because of their own experiences of oppression. Intolerance against queer people that are observed in these communities is because of a large range of socioeconomic factors like poverty and lack of education. Currently, the United States does not allow transgender people to openly serve the military, and there's a huge lack of legal protection from discrimination. Same-sex marriage was legalized only very recently in 2015, and there is a long way to go until LGBTQ+ people have the same protections as heterosexual and cisgendered people. There is a large generational gap between the older and younger generation, with the latter generally being much more accepting of LGBTQ+ people. This is very similar to the situation in Mongolia as we mentioned previously. Our team was surprised to learn about the many parallels between the United States and Mongolia, despite the two countries being so culturally different at first glance. Although the US is much more socially progressive, the same type of intolerance caused by traditional values is present, and there is still the same large schism between the young and the old. The survey. To find out more about how our peers felt about LGBTQ+ people, we conducted a survey that received over 70 responses at the time of recording. Here's the results. 93.1% of the people surveyed said that they believed LGBTQ+ people should be entitled to the same human rights as heterosexual people, whereas 6.9% of responses said that they shouldn't. 79.2% of our respondents said that same-sex marriage should be legal in Mongolia, while 11.1% said that they didn't know, and 2.8% of respondents said that it shouldn't be legal. When people were asked on why they didn't believe that same-sex marriage should be recognized in Mongolia, they gave a variety of responses. 4 people said, "I don't know why." 2 people said it made them uncomfortable. 3 people said that they didn't think it was right. 1 person said that marriage should be between a man and a woman. When respondents were asked whether they thought LGBTQ+ people should be allowed to adopt children, 95.8% of those surveyed said that they were supportive. The majority of respondents we surveyed said that they were in support of the LGBTQ+ community and their human rights. So what does this mean? It is important to recognize that most of the people we surveyed here are under the age of 18, or 95.8 respondents. The youth of Mongolia is much more likely to be tolerant and in support of queer people than the older generation. Many of the people who were raised during the socialist era of this country were taught very traditional ideas of gender and gender roles. Women were expected to be feminine and men were supposed to be masculine, and the two sexes were both expected to have as many kids as possible in order to increase the country's population. The younger generation, or the people born after or close to the beginning of the democratic revolution, are much more connected to the outside world and Western ideas of human rights. That is currently the biggest divide in Mongolia regarding LGBTQ+ rights. How you can help. After watching this, you might be wondering, how can you help? You can help by supporting or donating to LGBTQ+ organizations in your area or even internationally. Fighting for LGBTQ+ rights by protesting against discrimination or supporting and celebrating Pride Month. Defending queer people by making sure when people say derogatory terms, inform them that it is not acceptable and that it creates a toxic environment for people. Be vocal about your support for the LGBTQ+ community and their rights. Accept people who come out and make sure that you don't make them feel uncomfortable.